What is up, everyone, and welcome back. For today's video, we are going to be showing you how to install heated floors for your tile. All right, so for today's video, we're going to be installing the Laticrete Strata Heat. So that is the heated floor element you see right below my feet here. It comes in a couple of pieces. You get the Laticrete Strata Heat Mat, which is the white part. You get the heat wire, which is the wires that are running. You have the thermostat, which I have here. You also have the option to use the Strata Heat Thermal Pack, which is an additive that goes into a full weight mortar, which helps evenly distribute the heat throughout your entire floor. So what I'm going to be showing you today is how to install the mat, how to install the wire, also how to test the wire, and then also how to run your layout. So what I will not be showing you is how to hook up the actual electrical to the thermostat and to the box. And that's because Laticrete requires you to use a licensed electrician. It is also required that it goes on its own dedicated circuit. So that is not something that's in my wheelhouse. So I will not be showing you that today. Let's get right into it. The first thing you want to do is figure out how much wire you need. You're going to want to calculate the square footage of the area you want to lay your heat. So whether that's in the entire room or in a small section, take those measurements. Then what you're going to want to do is you're not going to have the cable box. So what you're going to need to do is check out the data sheet, which is located online for the Strata Heat wire, or I can put the link below for you to refer to. So once you get your square footage of your room, you're going to see on their chart, the sizing guide chart, that there's going to be 3 columns. Most of you guys are going to fall into the 323 peg column, which gives you the most coverage for your heating cables. So what you do is you take your square footage that's located here. And so say if it was 50 square feet, then you know that you're going to need a 200-foot length cable. So that's how you determine that. And if you are having trouble for any reason, you can always call the Laticrete technical hotline, which I will also post their number here. It's always good just to get a second opinion or somebody who knows a little bit more than you, especially if you're doing this for the first time. So before you begin even thinking about your installation or what steps you're going to be doing, the first thing that you need to do for installing heated floors is getting your electrician out to your job site and determining where you're going to have your thermostat located. You should have your thermostat in a place that's easily accessible, like the entrance to the room, or some place that you can walk into the room and turn on your heated floors if it's going to be something obviously that you're going to be using. You need to do this before you do anything because this is where you're going to start running your wires from. So you can't run your wires on your floor without having your thermostat location set. The electrician will come in and run the wires to this box here, which is a double gang with a single plate, so that your thermostat can fit in here nicely like that. So it's a 4-inch box. The wires are going to come into here and they're going to either be 120 volt or 240 volt. Depending on the power you're going to need for your room. It goes based on the size of the room. You know, basically 120 volt is just less power than 240 volt. And really, it's just based on how much square footage you're going to be covering and how much power you need for that space. So if you're in doubt and you're ready to order all your stuff, but you don't really know which wires you need, you can call Laticrete Technical Support and you can give them all the information of your project and they'll be able to guide you on which wires are best for you. Once you have the mat, the wire, the thermostat, and the thermal pack, if you're choosing to use that, you can move on to the next step, which would be determining your surface prep and starting to lay your mat. All right, so now that you have your thermostat location set, you know that this is where we're going to start running our wires. The next thing in your installation process would be to determine the preparation for your surface. So if you have a plywood subfloor or a concrete slab, you're going to have to prep that surface before you go ahead and start installing your Strata Heat Mat. Our subfloor has been prepped already, so the next thing we're going to do is get right into cutting and setting our Strata Heat Mat. So this is the Strata Heat Mat. It looks very much and acts very much like the regular Laticrete Strata Mat. So this is going to be where your wires will be housed in between these pegs. So basically this is going to provide you with 2 things, a place for your wires and an uncoupling membrane for your tile installation. All you need for this to cut it is either a razor blade or scissors. First thing I do is dry fit it, then I mix up the thin set and lay it down. So here's another thing that you have to prepare for when you're dry fitting your mat. This piece is going to come right up next to the first piece I laid. So anytime you have multiple pieces going in on your floor, which you likely will, you're gonna have something where maybe the pegs don't line up like this. You have to cut your Strata Heat Mat in a way so that your pegs are lining up. So the only way that I can get these pegs to line up would be to cut off this half row here. So once I cut that off, all of these rows will then line up like that so that my cables can run over this and continue on straight. So I'm not having cockeye cables. So that's another requirement of the Laticrete Strata Heat Mat. So now that I cut off that half piece, you can see all my pegs are in line. So now you have all of the pieces dry fit in the room, you have all your cuts made, your pegs are lined up, everything is good to go. The next step we're gonna do is mix up our thin set. For this, we're using Laticrete Tri-Light, and we're gonna mix it on the looser side, which is the requirement for installing any sort of uncoupling membrane, and more specifically, the Laticrete Strata Heat Mat. So let's get to that. Just gonna take my sponge, wring it out real quick. First, I'm gonna wet the substrate. So once you wet your substrate, you can go and add your thin set. So before you begin this step of applying your thin set, you need to make sure you have the proper trowel. So Laticrete requires you to apply this with a 1/4 by 3/16 V-notch trowel. Looks like this, very small V notches. You want to burn in your thin set with the flat side of the trowel first. Then you go back with your notches on the notch side, and you could just spread it out at first. You don't have to worry about it being perfect. I'm just spreading it out because I know I'm going to need more thin set. So I'm just trying to get it all over the area. So to save you from watching me do this entire area, this is what you want it to look like. I've burned in the thin set, I reapplied some more thin set if needed, then I ran my notches in all of the same direction. So I'm going to go ahead with the same exact process, water, burn in, notch, and then I'm going to roll out my mat. I'm going to take my first section of the Strata mat and I'm going to lay it down carefully over the flange, starting from the back of the room. So you just roll it out. Once it sits in the thin set, it is so hard to move. So just make sure you don't step on it until you are sure of where you want it to lay. Then you can step on it and you can start to roll it out. You can start from the center. So I'm going to just start from the center and work my way out and making sure I'm collapsing all the ridges and getting full coverage. Make sure you're applying a good amount of pressure. So now that this section is applied and rolled out, I'm going to finish off the rest of the part of the room here, and then we can start working on the wire. All right, so now that your mat is laid, the next thing to do is test your wires. You really should be testing your wires as soon as you get the cables. You want to make sure that they are working properly. In the box, you'll have a manual that will also walk you through the steps. And in the manual, there's also a table. These numbers are going to be very important based on the cable. Obviously, if you have 120 volt or 240 volt, the square footage of the floor that you're installing. So you want to pay attention to these values, and I'll walk you through how they pertain to my project in just a second. So a few things. You're going to have all the information you need right here on the side of the box. It's going to tell you the corresponding cable you have. You can also find that information on the wire. It's going to be right after the tag, which also tells you the voltage right here. So here you can see it has all of the information like on the side of the box. And this corresponding number is 0804 00502. You're going to find it on your chart. So our cable is right here. It's the first one. It's a 50-foot length cable. It tells me my power, my load, my resistance, and then the reference resistance band. So this is what I'm going to be looking for with one of my tests. So the first thing you're going to need is a multimeter. This is just a basic multimeter. We got it from Home Depot. And it comes like this. To do the test for the cables, you're going to have to just pull off these little covers because we have to actually wrap the cables around these nodes here. Just from knowing how my multimeter works, you're just going to have to learn how yours works. You're going to have to switch it on to the part that shows ohms. That's going to be the function you're going to be testing. And now my reader only goes up to a certain reading, and anything that exceeds that reading is going to give me this reading right here. But you'll see what I mean with that in just a second. So in your manual, it's going to tell you to do 3 different tests. And the first test is going to be the heating cable resistance test. So if you take a look at your cables, you have 3 different ones here. So you have the 2 cables that provide power, and then you're going to have the ground cable, which doesn't have any coating on it. So this test is going to be testing these 2 wires right here, which is the wires for power. So now referencing back to our chart, so we're going to be looking for our resistance band reference between 70.2 and 81.2. So that's going to be the reading we're looking for on here when we're testing these 2 cables. So I'm just going to wrap this around here like that, wrap the other one around the other one, and then you can see on the multimeter it's giving me a reading of 74.2. So that is within our reference. So it passed that test. So inside the manual, if you were doing this for a client or if you just wanted to keep the data for yourself, on page 32, they provide a control card so you can write down your model. I just put the last couple of digits. Resistance before, so this is before installation, which was 74.3. Then I'll write the resistance after I install it. So the next test we're going to do is we're just going to test for the ground fault. So basically, all you're doing with that is you're going to test the power wire and the ground. You could do both powers if you want, just to check. Now, what I will say is, let me put it this way. What I will say is that if you hold your finger on this test, you won't get an accurate reading. So you want to make sure you're wrapping the wires around, and you want to take your fingers off the tester so you're not touching or interfering with the wires. Since the reading is higher than that 200, I am going to get that 0.L on my multimeter, which means it passes for the ground fault test. So I'm going to take the node off of the one power and I'm going to put it on the other one just to test both, and same, no change. So that's good. So the third test is going to be the insulation resistance test. And for that one, again, you're looking for a reading of over 200 ohms, which, like I said, my multimeter is going to give me a reading of 0.L if it's over 200 ohms. So that would mean it passes. So for this test, you're going to take 2 power wires, both of your power wires, and you're going to put them on one node, and then you're going to take the ground wire and put it on the other one. And just remember to not touch the wires. So that means we pass for that one as well. So for that, you're just going to write down pass. So the last and final test is going to be the floor sensor test. This is also known as the temperature probe. This is going to be the wire that gets stuck into the floor to measure the temperature of the heating cables. So in the manual, it says it needs to be between 8K and 12K ohms. Our ambient temperature in here right now is about 90 degrees. So our reading is going to go down a little bit because of that. So it says here the thermostat uses a 10K floor sensor at 77 degrees. And then for temperatures between 68 and 86 degrees. the resistance of the floor sensor should be between 8K and 12K. So we're gonna just get a slightly lower reading, most likely because of the temperature in here is outside of that range. So if you are experiencing a similar issue, just make sure that that's why your reading is either lower or higher. So just remember, if your temperature is higher, your reading's gonna be a little bit lower. If your temperature is lower, the reading's gonna be higher. You get 2 probes, which should be installed with your floor in case one fails. But by testing both of them, if they both have the same reading, you can determine that that's correct. So to test these, the same as all the others. This one's a little bit more difficult because we have less wire to work with, but I'm gonna do my best. Just going to bend this. Yeah, so we're at 8K. And actually, it's falling in range, so that's even better than I expected. So you can go ahead and test both of your wires, and then just make sure that you note down here what you were at. I'm gonna put the temperature in here too, just in case. That's it for your testing. The next thing we're gonna do is lay the wire, and then we're gonna run the test again before we install anything on top of them. So the thought process behind this is we're going to run our cable from our box into the floor, start our layout, because this is required, this yellow stick is required to be 12 inches from the wall, right? So we can't just come in here and start our wire like this, because that would not be correct. So we have to run it from here. That would put this wire 12 inches away from the wall. Then we can begin our layout. We're gonna go 2 spaces up this way and staying 2 pegs, which is 2 inches away from the wall. We're gonna do 1 long run this way, heading to the back of the room. And then we're gonna do our spacing all the way out so that we're working from the back of the room out. Because what we don't wanna happen is work from the front of the room towards the back, have extra wire and have nowhere to put it. So we would rather work towards a space where we have extra space just in case we have extra wire. Now to lay down the wire, you can see how easy it is to press this in with your fingers. After a while, it will start to hurt. So what I recommend is you use a wooden float just to push it in. So like say for example this, we're going to be pulling this from here to here. You just press it down and that's it. And just make sure that your wire is sitting below your peg so it's nice and flat and it's not protruding up when you go to set the tile and interfering with anything like that. So now I'm just going to continue on with the layout. So now I'm going to run my wire all the way down to the end. So I'm pretty much just gonna run right up to this black line because I measured out the toilet base ends here and then 2 pegs away, so I know that I can go about right up to this black line. So you just pull, you press it in, and you take your float. So the next step is to run your test again, just like we did before. So the first thing is to do the heating cable resistance test like we did before. So we got a 74.5. Before was 74.3, now it's 74.5. That still falls within our range, which was 70.2 to 81.2. Just take notice that your thermostat's gonna come with 2 of the temperature probes. You want to install both of those. And the reason is just in case one is failing, you have another one in the floor just in case. So we're going to figure out where we should put both of them. Ideally, you don't want to put them both in the same location. So we can put the first one in the floor somewhere around here. Okay, so now I have both of the temperature probes placed. So the last thing we did was just drill holes for the wires to come through. We're not hooking any of this up. Tomorrow we have the electrician coming to run the conduit and then the power going to the box. And to our thermostat, which there's a thermostat cover that goes on here for all the operationals, but we're not hooking up any of the wire. We have the electrician coming and he's gonna do that. And then we can show you how it turns on and how it works. So the next steps, which are optional, would be you can come back and backfill all of this with thin set, meaning we would mix up our thin set, fill up all the holes and flat trowel it before we tile it, which would be something that I would choose to do before tiling, just so that I can protect all of these cables. Also, Laticrete makes what's called a thermal pack, and basically it's a silica product that mixes with any of their full weight mortars, so you can't use any lightweight mortar because of the polymers. And you would come in and backfill all of this. You can set the tile with it. Well, you should set the tile with it as well if you're looking to use the thermal pack to get the most out of the benefits. And basically what that does is it more evenly distributes the heat along the floor so that you don't have like pockets of heat. It would just be more of like a full heated floor feeling. Another thing to keep in mind is when you are setting your tile, that you are not working like a mess. So if there's any time for you to slow down and take a little bit more time to be more neat, this would be the time. I would recommend cleaning your tile joints as you go by using a soft toothbrush or something like that. Don't go back the next day with a razor blade scraping out your grout joints with the caked on thin set. Just set a couple of rows, let the thin set harden just a little bit, and then clean it with a toothbrush and keep your joints nice and clean so that you do not risk damaging any of these wires. All right, so now once your electrician is all done setting everything up, it's gonna look something like this. You're gonna have conduit running to your box, then you're gonna have 2 conduit running down to your wires that go to your floor. 1 conduit is gonna house both of the temperature gauge wires, and the other conduit is going to house the heating cables. Once you turn it on, it's gonna take you through a couple questions like the language, what type of floor is it? Is it electric? Is it laminate or tile floor? So just make your selections. It's very easy. Then it comes up to this QR code. You have to download the Strata Heat mobile app, and then it walks you through some prompts. You create a login. Once you're done creating your profile, now you're gonna scan this QR code through the app. So once you're finished with your prompts, this is what it's going to look like. And it's going to tell you what temperature you have it set to. You can lower it, hit accept, it's going to set, and then it will turn on. You have your menu options here, your mode, program, energy monitor, and your settings, and that's pretty much it. All right, so that concludes the video on the Laticrete Strata Heat install. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and for being here. Please drop a comment, smash the like button, and subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you on the next one.